The title of this webinar is Mentorship, Recruitment and Retention of Librarians of Color. And the panelists today are Marcellus Joyner from High Point Public Library. We have Leander Crocker from Durham County Library. We have Joan Hill from Livingston College and LaJuan Pringle from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Public Library. And our host for the panel is Angel Truesdale from UNC Charlotte. Angel joined REMCo, NCLA's REMCo section earlier this year. And so the whole group will kind of talk about REMCo and how they joined the section of NCLA. And then they'll get into the details of the panel questions for today. So with that, I will hand it over to them.
Thank you, Devin. We are really honored to be here. So I just wanted to say welcome again to the DEIA series with NC Live and this panel, Mentorship, Recruitment and Retention of Librarians of Color. The Roundtable for Ethnic Minority Concerns, obviously referred to as REMCo, is a part of the North Carolina Library Association. So I did want to mention that. I am the business librarian at UNC Charlotte Atkins Library and a proud member of NC Live Training Advisory Council and also a proud member of REMCo, and I have loved following everything that they have done. So before we begin with kind of the questions for the panel, I do want to start with introductions for our esteemed panelists. So each panelist, if you can give us your name and title, even though Devin just gave it, and your position on the REMCo board, and any projects you've been involved with REMCo that you've been proud of or that you've been happy to see come to fruition. So we'll start with Marcellus.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Marcellus Joyner. I am the supervisor of the Heritage Research Center at the High Point Public Library, the archivist for the High Point Museum. I am the current chair of REMCo. I'll be actually be rolling off this coming October at the conference, and it's been a whirlwind. I had the honor of leading REMCo during the pandemic, so that was exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. But I will point to one of my favorite programs. Well, did you want us to point out something as chair or over our total time being REMCo?
I think overall would be great.
Okay, so before becoming the chair, I was a co-chair, and I spearheaded a program called Ask the Professionals, where we brought in very experienced librarians to come in and talk to library students and early career librarians. It was a powerhouse panel with Wanda Brown, Mike Crumpton, other names are evading me right now, so I'll bring them back up later. But it was I love that one because it was like my first time in leadership, establishing or coming up, brainstorming a program, and then just having everyone on the executive board come together and help push it. It was amazing, and it went off very well. I was very happy about that. But I'm also very excited about the current executive board and pretty much every program that we've put on during the pandemic. Because when the situation happened, I had to beg the questions like, well, how are we going to approach this? And I didn't make the decision to push forward by myself. That was a group effort, and we just really came together and brainstormed ideas and got them out there and really pushed them. So I can't pinpoint just one for this executive board because we've done a lot just with the situation that's going on right now. And if I talk too much, just but I'll hush, so the rest of the panel can talk.
No, it's exciting to hear that REMCo has risen to the challenge, and I have seen that myself. Let's go on to Joan for introductions.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joan Hill. I am the reference and instruction librarian at Livingstone College inside of Andrew Carnegie Library, and I serve as the secretary treasurer for REMCo. Thank you.
All right, let's go to LaJuan next.
My name's LaJuan Pringle. I'm a branch leader with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. I'm currently serving at our West Boulevard location. I have been on REMCo for a year, and I'm currently serving as a board of director.
All right, and Leander?
Good afternoon. I'm Leander Croker. I'm the Business Services Unit Manager for Durham County Library. And I am serving as a co-director for REMCo. And I've been a member of REMCo since I became active in the library world way back in 2007 when I started off at North Carolina A&T State University.
All right, thanks everyone. So we do have our first question for the panelists. And some of you may have touched on this a little bit in your introductions, but tell us about something about yourself and your journey to becoming a librarian. I think we'll start with Marcellus again.
Okay, I'll jump right out there. My journey into the library field started in 2005. I was actually not working in an industry that was my undergraduate major. And I was a supervisor for the now defunct Linens and Things Distribution Center. Was kind of getting tired of that and wanted to get back into something that was pushing more towards academics. And I actually have a sister who's a librarian. So she suggested, I had no idea that she was actually in library school or was getting close to finishing at the time. So she suggested that I apply to North Carolina Central to get my master's. And she said she thought that it kind of like library field fit my personality. So I said I didn't want to jump directly into it without doing some investigating. So I actually started volunteering at the Jamestown Public Library in Jamestown, North Carolina, which is adjacent to High Point and Greensboro, very small little village in between the two. But anyway, that was my dive into it. Just doing some volunteer work on Saturdays. And this little library, they were actually still doing stamps, stamping your card out in 05. So it was very old school, very, very basic, not a lot of computer, not a lot of automated stuff going on. So I got a traditional, very 1950s to 60s experience doing that volunteer work. And I took to it. I liked it very much. So I applied to North Carolina Central, was there 06 to 08. Very wonderful experience. I was a American Research Library scholar at the time, so I got to travel a lot while in grad school, just visiting different types of libraries. I actually acquired both a paid and unpaid internship during that time, one for UNCG working in their archives processing collections, and also working at NC State, where I was assisted digital project archivist in doing metadata and scanning photographs. That was my introduction into digitization in the library field. And that took me on the path in which my career is going now. After I left there, I worked at the State Library of North Carolina on the digital, what was it? I'm sorry, Ensuring Democracy Project. And that was a collaboration between the State Library, ECU, and Digital NC, which is seated at UNC Chapel Hill. Stayed there for a little while, and then my next appointment was at Bennett College, where I was the digital project archivist there. Organized a couple of their collections, and also processed and created metadata for the digital information that they have on their library's website currently. Then once that was over, I ended up here at the High Point Public Library and the High Point Museum, also organizing their digital collections, as well as supervising the day-to-day at the Heritage Research Center, where we specialize in genealogy and local history.
That is a wonderful journey to this profession. I guess we can go with Joan again, next.
Okay, my story is a little bit different. I actually started working in libraries in 1995 as a high school student. I started out working at High Point Public Library, and then when I went to college, I ended up working in the Architectural Resource Center at UNC Charlotte for about 3 or 4 years. I took a break once I got out of school, and then about 2004, I started working at North Carolina A&T Bluford Library, and I worked third shift as a circulation supervisor on third shift. Then after that, I ended up at Livingstone College as a reference and instruction librarian. One of the things that was really unique about my experience is while I was working in circulation at North Carolina A&T, after earning my degree, I had the opportunity to work in a bunch of different capacities. I was able to work in reference, and I was able to work in archives, and I was able to do lots of outreach programs. So I was really thankful for that opportunity, because that has helped me today with what I do now. Thank
Also
you.
a great, yeah, that was really great. Also a great journey to how you came to this profession, especially starting in high school. Lawan?
Well, thanks. So I can probably, mine is a little similar to Joan's. My time in the profession dates back to high school, 1987, y'all. I'm going to go back probably a little further than most of you, but I was a library page for my library system in Michigan at the time. It's funny, I knew that I really enjoyed working in libraries in high school in 1987. And I went to go talk to one of the librarians about possibly entering the profession then. And she goes, well, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to work so hard to go to library school? You can go to a law school and make more money and have a job with more esteem. And I actually thought about that for a hot second. So I ended up joining the military and completely abandoning school initially. But when I got out of the military, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I went ahead and registered to study criminal justice and sociology. But while doing that in my undergrad, I ended up getting a work study job in the library. And it just made me fall in love with libraries all over again. This time I decided that I was going to go to library school, and despite all of the work, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. I joined Charlotte Mecklenburg Library in 1998. I joined UNCG, their library school, in 2000, and I graduated in 2002. During my time in Charlotte Mecklenburg Library, I've worked at several locations in several capacities. I joined the library as a library assistant. And right now, I'm currently a branch leader in the organization.
What a great story as well, that you kind of fell back in love with libraries too. Leander?
So I'll go back to high school as well. In high school, I volunteered under Sister Catherine at Chaminade Julian Catholic High School in their library. And they were the sweetest little old nuns, and they couldn't do a lot of the high shelving. Not that I'm very tall, but I could climb up on the ladder and do some of the high shelving. So that's where I was introduced to working in libraries. After graduating college, I looked for a year, got a job at North Carolina A&T State University working second shift. So me and Joan had a little bit of overlapping time there. And during that time, I was encouraged by Ayanna Sims to go to library school. So I worked simultaneously. I would take my lunch, go to class, and then come back and work the desk until midnight. After graduating, I became a media coordinator at an elementary school here in Durham. That was not for me. After that, I then came back into academic and went to work at Johnson County Community College for 3 years. And so I was their university academic librarian doing instruction. And I was like, I need to come back closer to home. And I hopefully and thankfully landed a job at Durham County Library, where I started off as an adult services librarian, where I was able to do adult programming, STEAM programming when we closed for transformation, did children's, teens, and adults programming in a transitional location at Northgate Mall for 3 years, and then helped develop the business unit and revitalize it because it had went away for a little bit and now it's back. And so I was really excited to do that. And as a result, we received grant funding to help continue and implement our programming. And then I joined REMCo. So here we are.
Thank you all for those great stories. I feel like there are obviously some similarities, and having, a background as an intern or library assistant coming through circulation, I definitely think is the path for many of us, including myself. So our next question here, and maybe a couple of you mentioned your mentor, but who was your mentor coming into the field or starting out earlier in your career, and kind of what was their impact on your professional life? I think we'll start this time with Joan, and we'll kind of follow through from there.
Okay. While I was working at Blueford Library, I actually was very fortunate to have several mentors and lots of encouragers, but Ayanna Sims and Leander mentioned her as well, but Ayanna Sims was very instrumental in encouraging me and making sure that I was on the right path. And also she is the reason that I got introduced to REMCo. So I'm very thankful for that. So thank you.
That is great to hear. Lawan, anything about mentorship?
I think that my mentors really, and some of the people who were really influenced a lot of the decisions that I made coming into the career started in Michigan. A young woman named Vera K. Anderson, who was my supervisor at University of Michigan Thompson Library, University of Michigan Flint Thompson Library. She was my supervisor at the time, and she really encouraged me to pursue a career in librarianship. When I got to Charlotte, it was really during my management years that I really started to see mentors come my way. Probably my most significant mentor within Charlotte Mecklenburg Library was Irish McNair, my first supervisor as a manager when I started at Beatties Ford Road Library in 2009. And I loved Irish. Irish just had this way of disarming people that I still to this day, I'm envious of, but she was really instrumental in helping me understand my role really as a Black male librarian within our organization. And I always think of her I always think of her whenever I'm sort of in the middle of a situation that requires somebody to disarm somebody. I don't have as much charm as Iris did, but I think that she was just very good and very instrumental at helping me along with my career.
Well, that is great to hear as a former mentee of Irish McNair as well. So definitely have her on my journeys. Leander?
Yes, I just want to reiterate Ayanna Sims. When I talk about her, she goes hand in hand with Euthena Newman, who was her mentor at North Carolina A&T State. And it was one of those situations, I call her the perfect starter mentor, because I was very timid, very shy. And she's like, no, you can do this. Don't be intimidated. Everything we do is teachable. Just ask questions. And Ms. Newman was the same way. It's like, this is what you can do. This is how if you don't know, this is how you ask, and don't be afraid to ask. And I always say it, that's the perfect starter mentor to encourage you in the field, to keep you going, to lay that foundation for sustainability in the field.
Oh, I love that. Yes. All right. And then we'll end with Marcellus on this question.
Well, I actually have a couple or a few people I look to as mentors or advisors throughout the field. As I mentioned earlier, my sister is my first one because she introduced me to the field. Stephanie Fennell, who is a librarian in the Durham County Public Library System. But during grad school, I would definitely say Dr. Ballard. He was a teacher at North Carolina Central. One thing about him that I really enjoyed and that really opened my eyes was that, when he taught, he didn't necessarily talk about the stuff that was there in your book. He talked about his experiences. From him, I learned that when you have a library degree, it does not mean that you just go work on a college campus, or you just go work in a public library, or you just go work at an elementary school. He gave us stories about working at the Department of Fisheries. And I'm sitting in class like, what does the Department of Fisheries have to do with librarianship? But basically, his classes was a plethora of telling you that you don't have to be locked into one thing, that there are special libraries that you can be a part of. If there's businesses out there, they have some niche within it that you can take this degree and go use it for. So Dr. Ballard definitely, while I was in grad school, was definitely a mentor. As I mentioned earlier, I was an American Research Library Scholar. And at the time, Jerome Olford was the head of that program. He was he was very instrumental, and he did not hold back when he wanted to correct you. So he kind of had that old school ride when he needed to. You like, nah, don't do that. Don't do that this way. Do it this way. He was a very big help. Just seeing how he operated, specifically when we visited the Midwinter Conference in 2008. I'm not an extrovert, so to speak, but I'm not a complete introvert either. But I saw how he moved throughout the entire conference, and how he encouraged myself as well as the other attendees under his tutelage on how to try to make real connections with people at conferences and within your workspace. Not just reaching out to people because they have a specific title and you're after something, but actually making a connection and finding out how what you bring to the table and what they bring to the table can come together and push an initiative or a program forward. It lit a fire under me so much so that when I left that conference and came back to North Carolina, I wanted to go in the archives section of library field. So I did cold calls to NC State, Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, Elon, UNCG. There weren't a lot of opportunities as far as practicums at the time. So, I was calling people up. I already knew the value of volunteering. I was like, I'll spend an hour, whatever I can get. Actually making trips, like taking off time to work and going to talk to archivists at their job. Like, how did you get in the field? How did you get on this path? And what do you like about it? And what do you want? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And I that led me into the position that I mentioned earlier at NC State. Lisa Carter, who was over the archives at the NC State's library at that time. I think we spent about 3 hours one day just talking about about the profession and archives, and she called me, I think like a week and a half later, and said, "Hey, you want a job?" I said, "Yeah, I'll make that trip." You know, so grad school and interning was definitely an adventure. You know, just I think I killed my Nissan Sentra driving between High Point and Raleigh for about a year and a half. And then I bought another car and put 200,000 miles on that until I finally got a job close enough to my home. So definitely Jerome sending me on that path. Lisa giving me an opportunity. Wanda K. Brown. And this is a very interesting story because I was actually on a path of leaving the profession after I left Bennett because I couldn't find anything or nothing was coming. So for about 6 months, I had to find alternate employment, but I was still applying for jobs. And I applied for a position at Wake Forest, did not get the job, but Wanda Brown was the first person I met that morning before my interview. And she just really poured into me as far as, you know, giving it your all and not giving up on this profession. You know, I think one of the questions she posed to me is like, well, why would you do that after you've just spent 2 years of blood, sweat, and tears and wearing out cars to, you know, just to lead the profession. So we had a very good conversation that morning, and we have been, she's been a unofficial mentor to me for ever since that day. So I definitely look to Wanda as being a mentor for me. And I'm going to sum this up. What I also learned is sometimes some of the best mentors and some of the best connections are made outside of unofficial venues. Definitely at conferences, you know, those times in between those sessions when, hey, we're gonna go grab a beer at the bar, you know, we're gonna go grab something to eat. That's when some real connections are made. So you can find a mentor in an unofficial capacity. I'm going to mention one more thing. Now, in an official capacity, I've been a part of the North Carolina Library Leadership Institute. 2016 as an attendee, 2018 as a mentor, which was my first official mentorship, first time officially mentoring people. So I kind of feel like I had the imposter syndrome up until that time. Didn't quite know how to approach it, but I knew I wanted to be real for those who I'm mentoring to. And luckily for me, it was a beautiful experience. So, you know, just wanted to kind of give coverage of unofficial and official mentorship. Oh, and I also did a stint on the planning committee as well. So I did the full matriculation through the North Carolina Library Leadership Institute, which I recommend for anyone who's around that 5 to 7 year mark and is looking to boost their career and push a little further and make some good contacts. And I'll leave there.
No, I think that is so great, Marcellus, sharing your story. I saw some common themes between all of the panelists, right? You know, some key conversations and relationships helped you kind of propel you in the profession. Seems like a key conversation kept Marcellus in the profession. So I think Marcellus touched on the different ways mentorship can show up in your life. It doesn't have to be formal, it can be informal. And then hopefully if you've had great mentors and you've had great leadership, that you then can go on to be a mentor as well. And this actually follows into our next question, which I'm just going to throw out to anyone who would like to answer. We don't have to have everyone, but you know, what are your views on mentorship? Marcellus has definitely given his. And do you believe mentorship could help with retention and improve morale in the field? Especially talking about librarians of color, right? So I'll just let anyone answer.
Okay, I'll touch on this because I am passionate about mentorship because it's one of those things, particularly with minorities in the profession, we're in isolation. And having a mentor who's kind of trodden where you've been before knows there's a pothole there, there's a hiccup there, not necessarily that you won't hit them. It's just, how do you rebound from those situations? And so with mentorship, I view it as relationships. I mentioned that my first mentors were encouraging, loving. Yes, let's go there. My mentor now is not like that. He is, you are XYZ amount of years in your profession. This is what I want to see. This is what we want to do, and that's the relationship that I need to push me further. And with that, it also kind of has that experience of, are you comfortable? And you're staying here because you're comfortable, or are you pushing yourself? Because there's a difference. And it's, are you scared to move on? And he and I have the conversations where he'll tell me how he thinks. It's not like therapy with him, where he's going to be like, no, I think you're doing this because you're not doing this because you're scared. I think you're not doing this because of X, and this is what I want to see. And so when we have those check-ins, it's the same way. And now I'm further enough in my career and have enough experience that he will come to me and be like, hey, I need a quick conversation. Let's check in. Let's see what's going on. So it's a reciprocal relationship at this point. And now, as I see new people entering the field, and I've been there and I've had experiences, it's like, I can have those conversations. Like, I've said this a few weeks ago, where it's not happening. I'm just not getting a job. And it's like, well, that's what it is. So are you going to leave the profession because you're not getting what you want right now? Because it's not always going to be instantaneous. And so I think that was so important for me to share with my mentee, that we've been there. And sometimes you may think that it's your job, you've done everything you need to do for it, but sometimes it takes somebody going, it's not your job. And you being able to take it in the chest and kind of move on. And, and I'm at the point where, like, I have mentors that are like that, where it's like, it's just not your job. Move on. And it doesn't mean I'm defeated in my career. It encourages me. And I know I have people who are the only African-American in their entire system. They're the only Latinx person in their entire system, and being able to pick up the phone and maybe call somebody who may be 4 or 5 states away or 4 or 5 counties away, to be like, I'm stressed, I'm isolated. If they ask me one more time to create a post about what we should be doing, I don't know what else to say. That can keep, okay, take a deep breath. We've all been here, and get them to the next point so they don't get burned out. And again, it's laying that foundation of, this is how we maintain in the profession so we are not burned out.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love kind of what you talked about, Leonard, the isolation that librarians of color feel, especially if they are, like you say, the only librarian of color in their position. I love that you talked about mentorship being a two-way relationship. It's reciprocal. So the mentor is getting as much out of that relationship as the mentee. I love that as well. I also just like that, again, we're just offering mentorship can happen in a conversation. It doesn't have to be a full-on relationship. And then I also love that you talked about, your mentor today may not have been the mentor you had in the past, and what you needed in the past obviously might not be what you might need today. So I think that's wonderful as well. Did anyone else want to speak to kind of their view on mentorship?
Yeah, I probably would add that initially in my career, mentorship wasn't a huge part of it. And I think that it was probably 2 ways. I didn't really ask a lot of questions. I didn't really seek people out. And I also didn't think that there was necessarily any kind of formal structure within my organization that allow for that. I do see the upside of mentorship now, having been in the career for so long. I understand all too well that it's really helpful, particularly for younger staff, to have someone to bounce ideas off of, to bounce feedback, to really gain an understanding of what their organization is, if they're interested in advancement, how they can do that, and really having, somewhat of a shoulder to cry on. No, that's probably the worst choice of words, but yeah, having that shoulder there to be there for you. I really appreciate what I'm seeing in a lot of our younger staff at Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. who are reaching out and asking for this kind of help. And it's something that I wish that I would have embraced a little earlier in my career. But it's something that I'm so happy to see that we're embracing now.
That's so great to hear, Lawan. I think that it can be challenging for early career librarians to make that first step, that outreach, right, to doing that. You know, we heard earlier from Marcellus about how he did cold calls to get practicums, and that might just be one way to break that barrier. So I really love hearing these different stories about how you can go about mentorship and just about, you know, you as someone who's been in the profession for a while wish they had that relationship. So hopefully this is encouraging for people on the call that if you don't have a formal or informal program at your library, maybe, you know, drop a little bit of a seed to your leadership or to anybody else that you're in the profession with to try to have mentorship relationships, especially if, again, we're talking about librarians of color who might feel that isolation that Leander talked about, right? And I just want to say I am the product of 3 Black women librarians. When I first started, Lawan mentioned Irish McNeil earlier. If I did not have those 3 Black women as my first managers in the profession, I can wholeheartedly say I would not still be here. So I would love to say that sometimes having kind of people who are of your same situation, talking to you, encouraging you, does help. It does help a lot. Anyone else want to talk to their views on mentorship or anything in that realm?
Well, I just wanted to jump in and just kind of encourage those who may be listening. You know, we don't really have a concept of where they are in their career, but what I will say is, you know, don't be afraid to step out there, and don't fall into the thought of the imposter syndrome, because you never know how you will influence someone. Now, you had 2 people mention Ayanna Sims. Now, Ayanna Sims wasn't necessarily my a mentor, but she is someone that I collaborated with, and I've gotten to know through the profession. So when you can use Ayanna as an example, if you putting yourself out there doing good work both in your institution and outside of your institution, trying to make the field grow and progress. When you do good things, you're going to touch good people and you're going to be an influence. So never underestimate being that you cannot or can be an influence to people. You know, like I mentioned earlier, you know, I kind of felt the imposter syndrome a little bit before I became a mentor, you know, thinking to myself, well, are you good enough to be somebody's mentor? Can you really lead somebody? And, you know, I had to really had to talk to myself about that, you know, and that's one of the things we learned in Leadership Institute, being emotionally intelligent. You know, just reading some of the literature from that institute, you know, it helped me get into the mind frame of being a mentor. And it's like, you know, what are your intentions for the people you're getting ready to lead? You know, like you know, you're not trying to lead them astray. So get the imposter syndrome out your head. Do the work that's set out a plan, execute your plan, and then go from there. And don't, you know, wait for the results. Don't pop your own tires. You know what I'm saying? Before you can pull off.
No, I love that, Marcellus. And you transitioned perfectly to our next question about, are you currently a mentor or have you been a mentor in an official or unofficial capacity to other librarians? And I'll again just throw that out to anyone who would like to share their experience.
Well, I'll jump out there. So I did talk about the Leadership Institute, and I would like to encourage everyone, again, I may have mentioned it before, please apply for that program. It is a wonderful program. it will help you put in perspective where you are as a leader within the field. It's a lot of self-examination. I won't go into a lot of detail because that's part of the magic of actually going through the Institute is doing some of the exercises that are involved over that 3 or 4 day weekend during that time. But I encourage anyone who has not done it, apply for it. I think it will, it never diminishes anybody who goes through it. It's always a plus. And you always make good connections, no matter where you are in the program, whether you're a mentee, a mentor, part of the planning committee. It's become, by each iteration of it, we've become this bigger family, and it's just a unit of like-minded people who want to see the field progress within North Carolina. Unofficially, I would say unofficially right now, I think two people consider me their mentor. I won't give their names, but yeah, just kind of unofficially right now, just, kind of trying to pour into people and keep them encouraged, and trying to point them in the right direction as far as programs or things they can be looking at to help their career. Because me, myself, I think of my career and where I see the profession going for African Americans and other people of other colors, or people of color. I think I have the Moses mentality where, I may not see the promised land, but I'm going to try to lay the path to make sure that you do, or someone behind you do. I don't want you to lag in your career where I may have progressed a little faster, 2 years faster. That's not going to happen to you, because I'm going to tell you, this is what happened to me, and I see you heading that way. Don't do that. Try this.
I love that so much, Marcellus. And I think that that's a reminder. I mentioned earlier, potentially, asking your leadership in your library about a mentorship program, officially or unofficially. But, Marcellus also reminds us that we can step outside our institutions, and that might even be better, especially if there are librarians of color who are isolated within their system. So look to your local state library association. We've seen some suggestions in the chat as well. Look to your community. Somebody asked about if there's crossover between public and college level librarians. If you're a public librarian, maybe reach out to local university librarians, and vice versa. If you're in a university and you want to learn more about public libraries, that may be the first place to start, is to look at some other librarians there. And I think it all ties in mentorship, recruitment, and retention, is building those collections and the collaborations. Joan, do you have something?
I am an unofficial mentor, and I pretty much, whenever I see someone that's a librarian and they have a need, I am open to anyone coming in and asking me questions. I also like to think of myself as more of an advocate. I advocate a lot of times for other librarians. So that's kind of how I see things. For example, one of the things that I saw at one of the places I was working is that a lot of our paraprofessionals were not actively involved in NCLA. So I kind of took it on and made it my point to try to help the paraprofessionals become part of NCLA and to feel more involved and connected. Because a lot of times those people that are paraprofessionals actually do end up later on sometimes becoming librarians. So I think anytime that people have a chance to mentor or do that, or vice versa, I think that they should do that. So I am fully in support of the mentorship programs and mentoring. So.
I love that. I think Marcellus mentioned earlier, and Leander, about when you do good work, people will come to you and will consider you a mentor, even if they don't even know you. And I love that Joan kind of put it out there that she is a mentor and that she's willing to mentor people. So I think that's great too. Did Lawan or Leander? Yeah.
I was just going to quickly say, I've never really served as an official mentor, but I believe by being a leader in my organization, I serve as an unofficial mentor. I feel like it's my duty, my responsibility to meet people where they're at. If they call me and they want to talk about things, it's my duty and my responsibility to meet with those folks and talk with them. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me over the years, and I've worked together with quite a few people in just helping them like understand career paths, working on talking about different ways to kind of expand careers and so on. And that to me, all of that has come just by virtue of being a leader in our organization. So if you are a leader in your organization, people are looking at you, and people do follow you. And I appreciate that. I'm humbled by that. And it's just really my hope that people that are listening are learning from me and also are taking steps that will give them a solid career moving forward.
I just want to echo what Lawan said with when it comes to us being a representation. We are the first recruiting step in anything when it comes to recruiting new, fresh, minority, whoever librarians. It comes from us. I'm young enough or old enough to remember the stereotypical librarian: bun, cat sweater, mean. And that was just my thing. I did not want to be that. I didn't want people to see that from me. So when I came and decided this is my passion, this is what I'm going to do, it's what is the best representation of that? It's a smiling, welcoming customer service space. I always say I come from the land of working at Victoria's Secret and David's Bridal. I'm with people at the most intimate times of their life and getting them comfortable with me. And it's the same thing with librarianship. When you come up, I'm a friendly face. I want you to feel warm. I want you to feel welcome. I want you to be able to talk to me as a patron and expose your vulnerabilities of what you may or may not be looking for in our staff, in our stacks. And so as a person who's like, oh, I've never thought about being a librarian because I've never seen someone who looks like me as a reflection of me or in my community, what image are they getting from me? Oh, I don't want to be that because Miss Leander is mean. Every time she's coming in here, she's telling us to be quiet and there's no interaction that's human when it comes to librarianship. So it's one of those things where, what are you representing to your community who could be potential people to come into the profession and change the dynamics of it all?
I think that's so poignant, Leander and Lawan, and you. I think similarly, you're talking about having this perception and being in leadership and, really showing people that librarians are this and they're that, and that people can come to this profession. I also think it's great that that bleeds into your public service and how people perceive you as they come through the door, because as we know, libraries, we try to be a place where people can belong. And one of the first ways we can do that is by providing great customer service. So I think that's great. If we don't mind, I would love to spend a little bit of time on this next question. It's very involved. So this question has a bit of setup, so I do appreciate it. And hopefully Devin or I can post some links to the reference points from this question. So according to the Diversity Counts report, this was conducted by the ALA Office of Research and Statistics, also the ALA Office of Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services, and Decision Demographics, which is a research firm based in Arlington, Virginia. This study was originally conducted in 2006, so this is a Diversity Counts report, and released in 2007, and then it was updated in 2012 using data from 2009 and 2010. So this was done over a long period of time. So out of that report, there are 6,160 African Americans, and of that, 5,500 roughly female and 500 roughly male that were credentialed librarians at the time, right? So 6,000, that's really, in my mind, such a low number. So based on that statistic, what are your thoughts on recruitment of librarians of color in the field at this present time? And again, I'll throw that out to anyone on the panel.
Go ahead, Luan.
I was just going to say yes. We need color. We need librarians of color. Yes to all of that. I feel like I wanted to piggyback on something that Leander said that really struck me probably just a couple of years ago when I was out bowling, and I was telling one of the folks on the other team what I did, and they were like, "Wow, you know, I didn't know that Black men could be librarians," and this was another Black male, and then that really struck me in a way. It broke my heart, but it simultaneously let me know that we have a lot of work to do just in terms of like letting people know that we're here, we're in the profession, we're doing great work, we're doing great things in the profession. There are lots of movers and shakers, lots of trailblazers, the men and women of color that are in our profession. I really that we need to, in addition to kind of like just getting ourselves out there, making sure that we're seeing some of the talent that's out there and that we could use in library land. There are so many talented people who don't understand like the function of libraries in our society, how they contribute to overall democracy, how they contribute to knowledge and learning, and really how we contribute to the education process. And I think that if there are more people who understood that, especially folks of color, we could probably have more people in our field.
Representation matters. I think that is so key. Yes, Leander.
And I think as a whole, librarians, we have to do a better job about telling the world what we do. My mom was a principal school administrator. I come from a family of educators, so the library wasn't a foreign concept. But when I've been able to tell my mom, oh, I'm traveling to go do this presentation, I'm on this panel to figure out how librarians and entrepreneurship and libraries can be entrepreneurial hubs. And I work with the county manager of business on this, and I work with the career and professional development on that. And it's one of those things where she's just like, what? And she loves to tell everybody, my daughter's a librarian and she has been this place talking about libraries and that, and this is, we really need to do that. And she's in a small town outside of Charleston. They do not have a McDonald's. And that's how I always frame how small the town is. They do not have a McDonald's. You have to go to Monk's Corner to go to McDonald's. So they may not necessarily have all the resources that are afforded to me at Durham County Library, but she says she goes in there and she's volunteered and she encourages them like, well, write an article and see what you can get and see if you can get some funding. And I went to visit her one time, but we've heard so much about you. Can you help us? And can you tell us kind of what you do to reach out to your community? And I always say, we have to do a better job. And I want to thank my director at the time in our leadership team. When we closed for transformation, we had a thing called Library Without Walls. And it was because I was displaced at the time. We would go out and we were in the community, and there were people who were like, oh, I didn't know the library did that. I didn't know the library did that. So every time I would go out, and if I had on my DECO library shirt, it was, oh, this is what we're doing. These are the types of program I'm doing. We also have this and we also have that. And you can go over here and get this over there. You know, and it was one of those things where we have to kind of break that traditional librarian, I'm behind the desk, I'm in this building, and be like, no, come here. Okay, you don't want to come? I'm gonna come to you, and this is what I'm gonna bring. And we have to be our own best advocate. I think about all the people that I'm seeing on Instagram. Billy Allen, if you're not familiar with him, he's a librarian who went to school at Central, but he's a librarian in Florida who has these crazy story times. He's been on Ricky Smiley in the morning, talking about how he brings people in, and his story times have hundreds of people just, well, before COVID, jammed in these little rooms, waitlist, because he just was so dynamic in his storytelling. And then all of the librarians in DC who are promoting for school librarians in the DC area and reducing their load, and how they're using social media as advocacy to get their message out and what they need. And we have to do a job of telling the community what's happening. So people, particularly younger people who are like, oh, that's a viable option. Like, I have this skill set, I have this talent, it's a viable option. And going back to Joan, I started off as a paraprofessional academic. Somebody saw a gift in me and said, hey, why don't you do this presentation? Why don't you do that? And are we doing that in-house to see we have this people who are in the building with the skill set? Are we reaching out to them to say, hey, you're an artist, do you want to do this program? Let me talk to your supervisor if that's something you want to do. Are we pulling from our own garden?
Oh, I love that. That was so great. Are we pulling from our own garden? We do have 5 minutes left for the panel, and then we'll go into the breakout rooms, which is obviously optional for everyone. But I do want to end on this question. If we can get some maybe short answers, how has REMCo played a part in both the recruitment and retentions of librarians of color?
Well, I'll jump in. Just from our programming, as you've seen, like through the pandemic, we've just tried to put some good content out there and reach out to our overall community, but also show those librarians of color that, you know, we're here, we're active. Come join us. You know, come join us. You know, give us your thoughts, your ideas, so we continue to recruit and bring more people in. The library field, and I think Leander may have made this point, the library field as overall does not recruit well. And to just look at the numbers, you know, the overarching numbers, and then to break down just the African-American statistic is staggering. It's staggering. But I always compare how libraries have progressed since the early days with the civil rights movement. You know, at that time it was Dr. E.J. Josie who was, you know, really making trailblazing. And, you know, the generation after his, you know, it was more open for us to, you know, come into these spaces and work. But, you know, just like in our community, you know, there's more work to be done, as LaJuan mentioned. You know, we got plenty of work to do. So I would just say, and I'm gonna try to keep it short, but you know, that is our whole point of REMCo's whole point of being here, to continue the work that Dr. E.J. Josie started, and to, you know, to be an example and a pathway for people to come in, progress, and nurture and mature their ideals and their goals and their aspirations in this field.
I would definitely encourage everyone to look up E.J. Josie and his story, and even the creation of the Black Caucus of ALA. I think that would be really educational for some people if you've never heard that name before. Do we have one final comment from the panelists about retention? Mm-hmm.
Retention, I would say with REMCo, is expanding your network. Again, I always, you know, that statistic is so profound, about 6,500 nationwide. And what does that look like? I have friends who say, oh, there are tons of Black librarians, because you live in North Carolina and you grew up where people had access to North Carolina Central. There are a ton here. I grew up in Ohio. I did not see anyone who looked like me in my local library. And so it's one of those things where it expands your network, so that way we don't leave the profession. Particularly if you're an academic librarian, if you look at statistically, how many of us are getting promotion and tenure in the library, in academic libraries? What does that look like? Do we have the support? Public libraries as a whole, it's a lot of work, and we typically face burnout, but as African-Americans and as people of color, we face a different level of stress and pressures that come from just the socialness of being a person of color in a white space. And traditionally libraries as a whole are white spaces. So REMCo offers you, if you're in isolation, a group of people to connect with. And if you just cannot take it anymore at your particular institution you're working at, you have, let me contact Joan, she's across the state. Let me contact Luan, he's in Charlotte. Let's see this. We have Brittany Champion, who I picked up the phone when I was doing some recruiting and said, do you know this person? What do you think? Can you tell me anything about him? And it just expands your network in a way that even if you don't know us, I don't think anybody on REMCo would not respond to a person reaching out for help. And so we have a way to connect you to retain, because we understand that this profession for everyone is stressful because we are trying to meet the needs of people. And as one of my librarians says, we are not superheroes because we cannot handle everything. And so having people to be able to spread it out to release some of that tension and seek help from is invaluable with REMCo.
I kind of want to speak on that. In 2020, I am currently in another library organization where I am the only person of color in that organization. So for me, REMCo provides that sense of connection. It is very easy to still be isolated this day and age, and a lot of people, I don't know that a lot of people don't see that sometimes, but for librarians of color, we are still experiencing isolation in some areas and groups. So REMCo has been wonderful as far as providing that sense of connection.
I love this, everyone. I feel like we've talked about some concerns of librarians of color, isolation. And I like what Leanda and Joan said, reach out, connect, build your network, and try to be more visible. I think as a profession as a whole, you're right. We need to be more visible. We need to be out in the community more. We need to tell people and show people who librarians are and that there are librarians of color out there. There's not many of us, but hopefully we can show people through REMCo, through other means that librarians of color exist and that you can thrive in this profession. I want to thank everybody on the panel and thank the REMCo board again. REMCo is a part of NCLA. They are the Roundtable for Ethnic Minority Concerns. And I personally, as a member of REMCo, would love to just ask anybody or everybody on this call, if you're kind of thinking about mentorship, recruitment, and retention of librarians of color, one of the first things you can do is support REMCo or support your local library association or roundtable or organization that is doing the work of trying to recruit and retain and mentor librarians of color. So thank you, everyone. Please stay in this particular room for us to go into the breakout rooms, but we are going to let our panelists go. We thank them for their labor and their time, and reach out to them if you have any additional questions. Oh, Joan just popped in her email into the chat box. So thank you, everyone, today, and just stay on if you want to go into the breakout rooms to discuss more. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all so much, panelists. I really appreciate you all sharing your experiences and your advice and the aspect of mentorship, which I feel like we rarely discuss in professional development and how instrumental that is. For those who are interested in sticking around, we'll have the breakout rooms for the next half hour. In the follow-up email, I'll include a link to REMCo's page where they've been hosting a lot of programming and have a lot of recordings of webinars that they've hosted in the last year, offering so much valuable advice, people speaking to their experiences. So I really recommend checking that out as well. That was something that wasn't discussed on the panel, but they've really put in a lot of work in the last year on that aspect. And if you are available and want to take a few minutes to give some feedback on our feedback survey, I've included the link in the chat. I'll also save the chat. There are a bunch of resources that were recommended there, and I'll include those in the email as well. Thanks, everyone.